Hi, Linda.
Hi, Grith.
Thank you so much for meeting me and taking this interview because I've really been eager doing this because we're launching our website that focuses scientifically on the gifted and the twice exceptional children. So we're really, really happy that you would like to help us telling the story of why this is important. And one of the things that we found to be true is also in Denmark, we have gifted children that, like any other children, suffer from dyslexia or ADD or other learning disabilities. And if they're identified as having a learning disability, very often we don't identify them as gifted as well. So I have some questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're ready. So why is it important to identify and help the twice exceptional children?
I personally believe that our twice exceptional children are going to be our leaders of the future. I believe that they have a different wiring, a different vision, greater access to the right hemisphere, more ability to relate to other people and not to be completely self-centered. I think our normal society is self-aggrandizing. And after you've dealt with learning disabilities and you've had a lot of people help you to overcome them, it helps you gain compassion. And we need a compassionate population in order to move forward in our world instead of destroying ourselves in the name of profit. So I believe that twice exceptional children are here on a mission, and that they have difficulties with left hemispheric school-based abilities because they're building other circuits of creativity, circuits of empathy, circuits of vision, being able to see things or intuit things that others don't see. So I believe that the stronger your reading ability and the stronger your memorization ability and the stronger your calculation ability and the stronger your spelling ability and the stronger your school achievement ability is, the better student you're going to be. And you may even be recognized as gifted in your environment. But those abilities that help you to become an A student do not necessarily help you to become a creative, innovative, passionate, inspired leader of innovation when you're an adult. They only help you become a good student. And I think we need different abilities today. And twice exceptional children have those innate qualities that will lead them to be able to help us change the world.
Wow, that's spot on. Yeah. You also said that when the quantitative gets to the extreme, when the IQ is more than 130 or below 70, the quantitative becomes qualitative. What do you mean by that?
Well, the example that our director of research, Frank Falk, gave me was water. When water gets too hot, very, very, very hot in the extremes, it turns to steam. When water gets very, very, very cold, it turns to ice. And so water doesn't look like water in the extremes. And intelligence looks different in the extremes as well. So when we're talking about children of above 130 or children who are below 70 IQ, these are special education populations because they learn differently. And we have worldwide appreciation of children who are 2 standard deviations below the norm. At 70 IQ and below, there is protection federally in every country that I know of.
That is so true.
But at 130 and above, these children are often in the regular classroom and being taught the same things they learned 3 years ago, and nobody's paying attention to the differences in which they learn. But we did a little pilot study at Gifted Development Center where we looked at our characteristics of giftedness, which can be looked at as qualities, 26 qualities of giftedness. And what we discovered was fascinating, that at 130, at 2 standard deviations above the norm, more of those qualities of characteristics of giftedness were apparent, were endorsed by the parents of gifted children than were at 125 or at 120 or at 115. And there wasn't any real difference in the number of characteristics endorsed at 127 and at 90. There isn't a great deal of qualitative difference in the abilities of children who are high achievers, who are smart, who have school smarts, and who are just barely average. But when you get to 130, more of those characteristics are endorsed. And when you get to the 3rd standard deviation, which is 145 IQ and up, that's another demarcation where even more of those characteristics are endorsed, and they're endorsed with greater intensity in the very true range. So we're seeing 3 different sets of characteristics. One is the normal range, one is the gifted range, and one is the exceptionally gifted range. And there are qualitative differences in how individuals experience the world when they are 2 or 3 standard deviations above or below the normal range.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it doesn't matter whether it's in the US or if it's in Denmark or if it's in Greece whatsoever, it's the same thing everywhere.
Same everywhere.
Yes. I have a question concerning the WISC-5 about the subtests. How can you use these for identifying the twice exceptional children?
There are 2 ways that I have outlined in Giftedness 101. By looking at subtests, I took a conservative view and said, if there's a 3 standard deviation discrepancy between their highest subtest and their lowest subtest, that's only 9 points. Every standard deviation is 3 points. When we see 9 points, we're looking at a twice exceptional child, especially if those high scores are in the superior or gifted ranges or the high or advanced ranges. So if you're seeing a child, let's say, with a high subtest score of 16, that's 2 standard deviations above the norm. That's the 98th percentile. Even 15 for a twice exceptional child, that's at the 95th percentile, 125 IQ. That still is way up there, so that you're above 95% of the other children in your norm group, in your age group. So if you see 9 points below that, then you're looking at a really big discrepancy. When we're looking at composite scores, and that's when you take the scaled scores and you turn them into full scale or verbal comprehension or processing speed, then in the composite scores, it's a 15-point discrepancy. 15 points is 1 standard deviation. So I say when there's a 2 standard deviation discrepancy in a composite score or 30 points, you're looking at a twice exceptional child if the high score is in the superior or gifted range. And there's a 30-point discrepancy. Now, when I'm looking at test scores, because I'm looking at a lot of different variables, qualitative as well as quantitative, I veer a little bit from that. And I will see that, oh, this is a mathematically talented child with dyslexia, and that's going to pull down all of these scores. Or this is a child who has a very high verbal comprehension, but everything visual is depressed. This is a child with visual processing. So I take all of these things into account because I have a PhD in learning disabilities. And so I know what to look for, what goes together. The other advantage that I think I have in interpreting IQ tests is that I call myself a researcher wannabe, but I worked in academia for 12 years and I studied the factor analyses and the G loadings on the different subtests, which most psychologists don't have access to that information, or they pass right over it in the technical manual because it's of no real interest to them. But G loadings are of high interest to me because I know that G stands for general intelligence or giftedness. So if a child has a very high score in similarities and they have a very high score in information, but their vocabulary score is 2 or 3 points lower, that immediately alerts me that we have a problem here. We have a disguised learning disability because I know that the G loading of vocabulary is even higher than information and similarities. And so the similarities and information score predicts a higher vocabulary. So why is that score lower? Is that child not a reader? Does that child have some subtle stealth dyslexia? Does that child have a vision issue? Does that child have an auditory issue? So they haven't been able to pick up vocabulary. So I'm looking at all of these complex variables.
Yes, this is what we love about you. And this is also the thing that we try to carry on your legacy doing this in Denmark as well. So I'm just so glad that you keep teaching us about all this. It's wonderful. Thank you. I also had this thing about how many subtests do you actually use in order to figure out if the child is twice exceptional? Is it 10 subtests, or is it 12? Is it 13, 14, 15? What would you say is a minimum?
I consider a minimum to be 12 for twice exceptional children, but they may need more than that if we're looking at specific issues. For example, I don't like cancellation. It has a very low G loading. In fact, it's horrible G loading. So cancellation doesn't correlate with intelligence. But if I'm trying to find out if a child has ADHD, I would give that child cancellation in addition to the other ones, because cancellation is a good subtest for looking at ADHD. If I thought a child might have auditory processing problems, I would give letter word identification in addition to the minimum number, because I'm using the subtests to test hypotheses about what might be going on with this child.
Yes.
But let me tell you why I give not just 10, why I feel we have to give maybe 13. I said 12, but I stand corrected. The core subtest that most psychologists in the United States, and I probably in Denmark as well, give is 10.
Yes, ma'am.
And they give the 10 because the 10 gives you all 5 composite scores. Your index scores come from those 10 subtests.
Yes.
You have to have at least 2 to create an index. Now, if you get a spoiled test, which can happen, then you're really in trouble and you can't do a composite without adding another subtest. So just to be on the safe side, in case you have a spoiled test, it doesn't make sense to me to just give 10. I think psychologists need to be thinking about that more deeply to prevent, if there's any kind of a problem, that they will have at their disposal other subtests that they want to give. We have found in our research, and this is not just research at Gifted Development Center, but research throughout the United States with 390 gifted children in 7 sites, that the strongest indication of giftedness is the verbal expanded crystallized index. That's 4 subtests, because 2 subtests, similarities in vocabulary, is like a short form,
Yes.
but it isn't a robust measure of verbal abilities. The 4 subtests, similarities, vocabulary, information, and comprehension, make up the verbal expanded crystallized index, and that's equivalent to the old verbal IQ.
Yes.
That, I think, is an absolute bare minimum when you're looking at finding gifted kids.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Give the 4 verbal subtests. So that automatically gets you into the idea of giving 12.
Yes.
You give 12 because you're trying to find giftedness, and the research shows that the VECI is the best measure of giftedness. But if you're looking for twice exceptional children, it also, and if you're looking for kids for a mathematics program, if you want to have a STEM program, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or you want a really enriched math program, you must give arithmetic. It's a supplemental test. So I can't imagine not giving arithmetic, because I want to find mathematically talented children. So that brings it up to 13.
Yes.
If you give those 3 optional subtests, which are comprehension, which is also very good for finding children on the spectrum because they don't do well on comprehension.
No,
and
true.
It also helps you to find children with auditory processing problems. So comprehension and information are your 2 supplemental verbal subtests, which I think are absolutely essential in every gifted eval.
Yeah, so do we. Yeah.
And then you give arithmetic in addition. By giving those 13 subtests, you can calculate a new index, which I invented. I called it the gifted index, but it is called technically the expanded general ability index.
Yes.
And that's 8 subtests. And I like those 8 subtests because they give you the 4 verbal,
Yes.
2 spatial, and 2 mathematical. And to me, if you want to find giftedness, look at your spatial abilities, look at your mathematical abilities, and look at your verbal abilities. And all of the research we've had for 100 years in the scientific study of intelligence tells you that the main factors are verbal, mathematical, and spatial. So if we have the ability on the WISC-5 to do a composite of those items, why not use it? And it only requires 3 additional subtests, 2 that you would give anyway to get the VECI, and then arithmetic, which you would want to do for mathematically gifted.
Absolutely.
In our studies, we found that that was the 3rd highest score for the gifted sample of 390 was the EGAI.
Yeah.
The ECI was first, and I think the second was the verbal comprehension index. And then I think third was the EGAI. So it's a really good measure to find children who qualify for gifted programs of various types. The mathematically, the spatially, as well as the verbally.
Yeah.
Then the other subtests are very useful for finding specific issues. So you want to look at your auditory, the ones that are presented auditory, and compare them to the ones that are presented visually. That helps you to look at auditory issues or visual issues. You want to look at the items that are correlated with reading. Symbol search is a core one. It correlates with reading.
Yes.
Coding correlates with handwriting.
Oh, yeah.
Cancellation correlates with ADHD issues. So you give different subtests to find different issues.
Yeah. I love just listening to all of this, because one of the things that you also said is that we salute the children for being detectives, and actually now you're just a proof of being your own detective,
Exactly.
finding the best in all children. Yeah, thank you so much. We've known each other for many years now, and I've always seen you as very proactive and innovative. You've never seemed to settle down with old ideas and facts, and you've just been constantly moving on, trying to turn all the stones on your path. Um, so now I'm very curious at why did you actually think it would be a good idea that first of all I started to study and implement the world game whilst testing these gifted children that are also twice exceptional, and why my husband also as well went into the project. Why did you decide this would be just the thing?
Well, I was introduced to the World Game when I spoke in the Netherlands, and Marianne van de Koolwijk and I were on the same program, and I was enamored of this instrument immediately. And I saw how it could be used for culturally diverse children. And that was my original reason for becoming interested. We need methods of finding culturally diverse, gifted children who do not do well on IQ tests. Our IQ tests are very verbal and very culturally bound, and the World Game is not. The World Game is good for all cultures.
Yes.
And it is good for children of different linguistic backgrounds. And the directions for it can almost be pantomimed. And
Yes.
you can show your abilities even if your verbal skills are not great.
Yes.
And I have a new idea that I want to do with it that I just came up with in the past few weeks, but I'll share that after I answer your question about why did I turn you into it. I love what Gifted Children Denmark has done with, I don't think you call them screeners anymore. I think you call them consultants.
Yes, ma'am.
But when I first met you, they were called screeners. And I loved the grassroots parents' understanding of giftedness internally and being able to help other parents recognize when they had a gifted child or not. And there was always that question of how subjective this was to find children who would be a good match for Gifted Children Denmark. The reason why your organization wanted to have something like that, where in the United States, all you have to do is pay a fee and say your child's gifted and you're automatically accepted into National Association of Gifted Children or the Gifted Children's Association of San Fernando Valley or the New Mexico Association. They just want your money. But you were not, the Gifted Children Denmark organization that you began wasn't satisfied with just, okay, pay a fee and you can be part of us. You wanted there to be some vetting process to make sure that you were getting the right people who really needed the services. And I think this was very smart since you have a big summer gathering. You wanted to make sure that the people who joined the organization were mentally healthy. That's important because you don't want to infuse the organization when you have a summer gathering with someone who could be dangerous. And so it was necessary, I think, to have a vetting process of some type. And you had not been 100% enthusiastic about that method, and you were looking for something else. And you came to visit me right after I came back from Holland, and I said, "This is it. This is the method. This is what you've been looking for." And you thought I was crazy, but you went anyway because you understood Dutch enough that she could teach you everything using the Dutch materials. And your linguistic background enabled you to gain the training. And then you and Marianne formed such an amazing bond. It was beautiful to see. And then you started to work with kids with the whisk who had had the whisk, and you began to see a correlation
Yes, ma'am.
between the whisk scores and the world game scores that you were getting. And that was the moment of aha for you.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
then you also were trained by Marianne on the therapeutic or projective qualities of this game, which because it originally started as a projective test.
Yes.
And then you saw that in a report on a child who you knew, the report about the child's issues matched exactly the issues that came up in the world game.
Yes.
And you began to see its therapeutic capabilities as well. Now, it was used in the Netherlands for a very long time to find, they didn't call them twice exceptional children then, they called them visual learners.
Yes.
But they were usually visual learners who had school problems.
Yes.
So in a sense, they were twice exceptional children. So it's been used for decades to find children who have difficulties with school, but who learn visually.
Yes.
And you saw immediately when you started working with twice exceptional children that it was an amazing tool for finding twice exceptional children.
Absolutely. And since also we started, I tested more than 1,300 children now. It's amazing. And since we started the project, also communicating with you about the whisk and comparing the results, that we sometimes have children that had the world game, and I say this child is gifted, and they go to some other psychologist for the whisk, and they come back saying, no, the psychologist said, I know so many things about giftedness, and now it just shows my child is not gifted. And like, I'm so sure your child is extremely gifted. And then we start figuring out, like small detectives, like you taught me, and we try to figure out what's going on, what's happening. And we've actually, the wildest thing I've ever seen is a child jumping with 36 points in an IQ test.
Wow.
From figuring out what was the issue until the next whisk. So I know that this tool has some capabilities, and we're still not done trying to figure out all this science about it and all this research. And I'm just so thankful that you accompany me on this journey, because I would rather not stand alone. So that's just yeah, I think that's wonderful.
My newest desire to use the world game. I just finished reading Becoming by Michelle Obama. And I believe that she's a talent scout, and particularly a talent scout for Black girls who have great promise, like herself. And she went to a selective school for the gifted in the Chicago area. And then she was accepted at Princeton and distinguished herself there. And she knows they're out there. And she really, really, really wants to find those kids. And what I want to do now is to find the money to create a study. Maybe I'll do that through whatever comes through from the Institute. But I want to study particularly, I know I should do the whole gamut and be gender fair, but I want to find gifted girls in the Black community too. Yeah. And I believe that I would like to try a whole variety of different things and see what works best. One thing I would like to give them is the whisk, because that's like the Euro of testing. Yes. It's what everyone understands. I'd also like to have them have the DAS-2, which is really the British test. That's the British ability scale that was translated or modified by the author for American audiences, and then called the differential ability scale, but it's the same one. And the British ability scale is very popular in Europe. So I want to give them that one too. Very few people know about the DAS-2, but that I'd like to try and see how they do on that. Then I would like to give them the Stanford Binet LM, which is a verbal test, and the Black population is very verbal. They're orators. They excel at verbal. And so all these, quote, culturally fair nonverbal tests don't work for them at all. They're not, they weren't designed for that community. But the old studies that are like almost 100 years old now, that were done by Martin Jenkins, where he found Black kids with 200 IQ, over 200, a Black girl with an IQ that surpassed 200. He used the Stanford ALM.
Yes.
And I want to use the test that he used and see where we go with that. Then I want to give them the world game.
Yes.
And I want to see if that is a better indicator. And then I'd like them to have gifted qualitative assessment. And I want to look at parts of all these things and just say, find out which of all these gives us the best indicators, or which parts of which IQ test, plus the world game and qualitative assessment. What are the pieces that we can put together to find Black girls? And I had this aha after I finished reading Michelle Obama's Becoming. So that's my newest
what we're going for. Yeah. I already did a study with the world game, testing a lot of children from the Middle East.
Oh, good.
Yes, and a lot of them didn't speak Danish. They were unaccompanied Syrian refugees, children, and I also tested a lot of Turkish children and Arabic children, and it's been really, really interesting to see how they express themselves. I was actually asked if I would come to India to try a village down there and test them. I was just so afraid of what would happen to my stomach with all the food down there because it's so good.
I've been invited to India and I didn't go. I had the same worry.
And last year in the autumn, I was actually supposed to go to Greece to do a testing of 2,400 children with the World Game.
Wow.
But then the COVID came and put an end to that. But we actually hope that this can happen sometime in the next couple of years. I have some, just the last question you can say so is, what do you believe that you and I have accomplished together, in particular throughout the last 4 years, in contrast to how it used to be in the good old days? Is that?
I am so excited with all that you've done. You are putting the world game on the map in ways that it couldn't have happened before your enthusiasm. And I'm so proud that I was a midwife to that process.
You were the crazy lady from Colorado.
Because it was being used, but it wasn't really being validated with the whisk until you came along. And now you have infused it. You've infused this beautiful tool with new data that it didn't have before. Then you opened your home and allowed me to bring all these people to get training with Marianne van de Koolwijk in this gorgeous setting for what? We had 22 at the dinner table every night. And Denai came from Greece, and it changed. The people who came together, most of them from the United States, were changed as a result of being in your world. And you found all of the children for us to do practice tests with in the Danish schools, and you orchestrated it all. And it was a magnificent gathering of people who are making a difference. Tina Harlow is now infused the world game into her practice, with her therapy practice with children in Steamboat Springs. Marcus Hunt is now using the world game for his summer program to find culturally diverse children to go to a special program at a wonderful school for the gifted in Denver, the Logan School for Creative Learning. Denai has opened up 9 centers for the gifted in Greece and is using the world game as a method of finding the children. I mean, your impact, your influence, and what we've done together has been so heartwarming and exciting. I am looking forward to many, many, many years ahead. My parents lived to be 94 and 98, so you're not going to get rid of me so quickly. I'm looking forward
Good.
to our working together and on twice exceptional children, on profoundly gifted children, on children who are culturally diverse, and finding all kinds of new ways to identify them and to serve
Yes.
them.
Yes, and never stop doing that, and never stop being the detectives that you always said we were supposed to be. So
Yeah.
this is just a wonderful thing.
Well,
Thank you so much.
twice exceptional children need detectives. If you're only going to give them a standard boilerplate 7 or 10 subtest whisk, do not test twice exceptional children because you are not equipped to find them. They take extra time. They take extra commitment. They
Oh,
take
yeah.
extra dedication. And when the whisk doesn't work and you don't find them, then you find other tests that do. But you keep looking until you
Yeah.
see what
Yeah.
is causing the frustration for this child.
That was a perfect ending. Thank you so much for talking to me. And as you said, this is part 1.
Right.
So so we just keep going. Now you told me how long you're supposed to live, so I actually go for a goal. Uh, can't wait. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing this with me. And it was really, really wonderful seeing you again.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.